Chapter 1, The Relationship of These Sisters. Everyone subject to the scene would agree this is unbearable to witness. Garfield, hey sis. That luggage looks pretty heavy there. Want my amazing self to carry some? Frederica, Garf, no, do not worry. I am merely offering some slight assistance, since it discomforts me to be constantly served as a guest. Feel free to relax, Garf. Garfield, well, got it. Just holler if you need anything, Kay? Garfield scratches his cheek, standing stock still as Frederica pushes the trolley. Frederica gazes at him for a moment, but immediately pulls herself together and refocuses on her work. The small wheels roll across the floor, their noise fading further down the mansion's hallway. Garfield dazedly watches his sister grow distant. Subaru, so annoying. Garfield scratches at his short, blonde hair, sighs, and walks off in the opposite direction from Frederica. Subaru puts his hand to his forehead, having witnessed this scene from around the corner of the hallway, and bemoans the irritating exchange. Emilia, they've had a week to calm down and talk, but they still look so uncomfortable. Says Emilia, hidden in the same place and same manner as Subaru. Subaru was squatting while Emilia spied the exchange from above him. Subaru feels Emilia's breath grow distant as he stands up and rotates his hips. Subaru, it's a decennial reunion, and one without any contact during the decade. I heard their goodbye wasn't exactly an invigorating one where they were wishing each other success, and I can understand it being awkward, but... Subaru crosses his arms and tilts his head. He can understand it, but it's still irritating. Annoying. Watching them makes his back itch. Garfield and Frederica have been like this ever since their reunion. While they pretend to be on acceptably affable terms when others are around, things are actually poor. Garfield might look emotional and impulsive, but he's a surprisingly good actor when he puts his mind to it. And there's no need mentioning how well Frederica conducts herself. They probably hadn't been planning to, but the siblings have successfully deceived quite a number of people in this handful of days. But it's obvious to Subaru, who has often caught the two of them alone, and now Emilia's witnessed it too. Emilia, it looks like Garfield's trying to approach her, but Frederica can't look at him straight in the eye. Even though they're finally back together. How come? Subaru, it's hard to enjoy the reunion when the goodbye's so messy. I mean, I'm just going off my manga knowledge here. I think the problem's Frederica. Emilia is right, Garfield is ready to be open with Frederica. But Frederica looks less promising. Frederica might be feeling guilt toward her brother, who was left behind in Sanctuary. During all of that time, Garfield sharpened his fangs to secure a stubborn, childish heart, which comprised a third of the obstacles that Subaru had to deal with in Sanctuary. Yes, Frederica is partly responsible for Garfield's attitude. But having said that, Frederica did not purposefully ruin Garfield, and nobody is in the wrong here. Actually, if anybody is in the wrong, then it's Roswell. And so not Subaru and not anyone else casts blame on Garfield or Frederica. But it seems like they feel otherwise. Subaru, man, what a mess. It boils down to Frederica having an excessively strong sense of responsibility. Frederica left for the outside world so that she could create a home for the people of Sanctuary once the barrier was broken. She bore an incredibly noble and lofty burden for a 10-or-so-year-old girl. Perhaps that ambition of hers had been what caused her to leave Garfield behind. Ultimately Sanctuary was lost, and what Frederica worried would happen did. But thanks to her actions, there were places ready to accept them, scattered and shorty though they were. And that was something she ought to take pride in. Still, she feels more guilt than accomplishment. Because her guilty conscience must be overly strong. Subaru, what the hell, you can't do that. When you pull off something amazing, you have to puff out your chest with pride. Emilia, I agree. And if you think you did something wrong, apologize. Then they'll forgive you. I just want them to get along. Both Garfield and Frederica have vanished from the hallway. Emilia looks at the spot where the two had faced off, her amethyst eyes narrowing. Subaru peers at her and nods. Subaru, yeah. Subaru, alright. We're gonna give them a little push so they can sort this out. Emilia, give them a push, you mean, have them make up? Subaru, yup. We have complicated brother-sister, sister-brother, human relations here. If the mood's so sticky they can't move, then how about some third parties cause enough ruckus to jolt things? Subaru claps his hands, raising his finger as he makes his proposal. Emilia considers it for a moment in silence, before giving a determined nod. Emilia, you're right. MMHM, families should get along. Okay. Let's do it. Let's do our plum best to have them make up. Subaru, who says plum anymore? Mutters Subaru as a motivated Emilia balls her hands into small fists. While thinking, man, it's been a while since we've done those lines. The reprieve from issues stemming from Sanctuary had only been fleeting, as the two problems of terrible post-processing and housing assaulted Emilia's faction. Roswell's plot, parts of which he claimed no responsibility for, had burned down the mansion. They could rebuild it, but reconstructing a building that had been burnt to a clean crisp would take time. It seems that there is no convenient magic in this world to reform objects that have lost their shapes, or any Full Metal Alchemist-style techniques to erect buildings in an instant. Their only choice was to contract a builder from a nearby village or town, or perhaps an architect specializing in noble estates and villas, to build it. Roswell, however, that mansion was not my main house. It was an inconspicuous spot to shelter Emilia-sama, while leading up to the royal selection. I was planning to move to the main house shortly after the selection started. So it's not as much of a problem AOE as you're making it out to be, is what Roswell said when they started looking for somewhere to relocate. Apparently the Mathers family has several mansions on hand, and the main house has already been prepared as their base of operations. Nobody is residing in the main estate except for those maintaining the place. Once the workers have everything prepared to welcome their masters in, the group will relocate their headquarters to there. But where do they stay in the time between now and then? Roswell, don't worry, that's also been addressed. Some relatives of mine have a mansion in a region not far from Sanctuary. They're a branch of the Mathers family. We can stay there for a while. Though I suspect the large number of guests will trouble them. Roswell's relatives is an incredibly unsettling phrase, but nobody had any better plan. After that discussion, the main players in Emilia's faction went to the relatives' mansion, while Arlem and Sanctuary's people went to Arlem village. Perhaps so that Sanctuary's residents could be accepted as residents of Arlem, they were purposefully introduced to other villages within Roswell's territory. Frederica had been the one to set the foundations for this, and it all ought to be considered her achievement. Though, while all of Sanctuary's residents are part Demihuman, they're also all half-bloods. None of them look too different from an ordinary human, so blending in won't be too hard. And though they might have different customs due to their ignorance of the outside world, the kind people of Arlem would surely teach them the basics without hesitation. Everything might look settled, but the problems will still keep piling up. Even so, no obvious trouble is occurring at the present, since everybody has done their absolute best. Subaru prays that all the noticeable problems will be resolved before anything can happen. And he has judged Garfield and Frederica's relationship troubles as something to resolve during this blissful, boring period. Subaru, and thus masterplan make Garfield and Frederica friends again is a go, is sort of where we're sitting. Do you have any suggestions? Ram, this is the first thing you say to me upon entering the room? Intruding on my peace is a heavy crime to pay, Barusu. Says Ram in an emotionless voice, seated and glaring up at Subaru. Her face is expressionless as always, but Subaru's relationship with her means he picks out the wisps of emotion swirling in her eyes. As a qualified interpreter of Ram's emotions, Subaru judges that she is currently displeased. Subaru, I know you look at me like that a lot, but does that mean that you're basically always displeased when interacting with me? Don't you ever get tired of being cross all day? Ram, do relax. I only do this when speaking with someone annoying or pointless to interact with. Subaru, I see, alright no hold on. Subaru furrows his brows at Ram while she implies that he is currently one of the two. Ram snorts at Subaru's reaction before closing the book in her hands. She stands from her seat and offers it to Emilia, who stands beside Subaru. Ram, here you are, Emilia-sama. Emilia, thank you. But it's okay. I know it's exhausting if we stay for too long, so we'll be done quickly. Ram, I see. Then I shall gladly take it. Subaru, so you're not offering it to me. You weren't kidding about gladly, geez, sister. Subaru shrugs as Ram seats herself back in the chair. But something that Subaru says makes Ram's brows furrow slightly. She must be reacting to the word sister. Emilia, Ariam-san still the same as before. Ram indeed. Again today, she's sleeping so quietly that you cannot tell she's alive. Emilia speaks with concern, and Ram replies with her voice slightly lowered. On the bed next to Ram's chair, where the pair are looking, sleeps a girl. With short, blue hair and a face identical to Ram's. A light blue sleeping gown garbs her, and the size of her chest as it pushes the blanket up is the only point of difference between her and Ram. Obviously, this girl's name is Ariem. She remained asleep through the mansion fire and their relocation. Until they remove whatever is causing it, she will likely remain sleeping forever. Subaru, do you feel like accepting it yet? Ram, I did tell you. I'm not so thoughtless as to believe entirely everything when I still haven't spoken to her yet. Though what I'm seeing is far too persuasive to dismiss entirely. Complex emotion arises in Ram's eyes and Subaru winds up frowning. Ram's expression as she watches REM sleep is horribly melancholy from Subaru's perspective, being that he knew their relationship. The elder doted on the younger, and the younger respected the elder. REM and Ram's relationship was the exact picture of beautiful, familial love. As REM sleeps, Ram's memories contain not name nor recollection nor existence of her beloved sister. Subaru knew this would happen, he had anticipated this would happen, but it still makes him horribly disconsolate. But even so. Subaru, you say it's complex, but you come visit here every day for her. Ram, I do wonder. Honestly, not even I know what I'm trying to do. But it calms me down to be with this girl you call my sister. No, part of me is unsettled too, but... Subaru, unsettled? Ram, because I'm seeing my own face, isn't quite it. When I look at her as she sleeps, I feel something astir in my heart. It's as though I'm chasing after mist, something which my hands will absolutely never grasp. Ram puts her hand to her chest. Subaru quietly gulps. Everyone in the world except Subaru has forgotten REM, but even so, she remains a thorn inside her only blood relative, Ram. Ram doesn't seem to know the name of that thorn, but if it's something that REM left to her dearest elder sister, then it constitutes more than enough of a clue. Subaru, I'm open to tell you everything I can about what she's like or the times we've spent. Ram, I think we better not. Subaru offers to help Ram recover her memories, but Ram shakes her head. Subaru's brows furrow as Ram puts her hand to her chin in thought. Ram, it's this unreachable hollowness. It's like there's a hole inside me where she used to be. And if there is, anything you fill it with will definitely fall out. And even now, just hearing she's my sister, her appearance is the most obvious indicator, but it still doesn't feel real. It feels like, the moment I stop these daily visits, even what I'm feeling now will disappear. Emilia, and that's the curse of the witch cult's gluttony? Emilia interjects, looking like she cannot let the topic slide. Ram looks up to find Emilia with her brows lowered in a rare display of anger. Ram, a gross feast of names and memories. My impression of the witch cult was never good, but it's certainly abhorrent now. Emilia, witch cult. Mutters Emilia quietly, her gaze lowered. While Ram's speculation surprises Subaru, the maliciousness of it also makes him wince. This doesn't feel real for Subaru, who remembers REM clearly, but it isn't that Ram's existence is missing from Ram and Emilia's memories. It's that it's missing in perpetuity. Just how sand never stops falling from an hourglass, it is continuous, ongoing now and forever. Subaru, we can't do anything unless we stop what's causing it. The more Subaru talks about their memories together, the quicker the sand will fall. Perhaps even Subaru will forget the memory the second that he voices it. Ram is concerned that REM will disappear from the world, or at least that must be part of it. Ram, it seems that you have some thoughts about the cult, Emilia-sama. Subaru bites his lip while Ram looks up at Emilia. Her pale cheeks stiffen as Ram's cerise eyes gaze at her, before she slowly nods. Emilia, I've done lots of thinking about the witch. Because I've been cursed at so much for looking like her, but the cult is. Ram. Emilia, apparently it's something I wanted to forget. But I can't regard the one I remember and the one that's there now as the same. What could have happened since then, that it's like this now? That's what I want to find out. Subaru, I don't really want to say this, Emilia-tan, but you get that they're not people you can really communicate with? It'll probably end up as a painful experience. He doesn't want to snuff Emilia's will, but it's unfair for him not to say it. The witch cult that Subaru knows is a giant mass of malice constructed by a bunch of religious crazies. He doesn't know what it used to be like. But that's what the cult is like now. Emilia, thank you for worrying about me. Subaru's concern makes Emilia smile slightly, and she shakes her head. Emilia, it's okay, I understand. What happened in my memories, and the people I was with, it's all a century ago. There's no way they could still be alive. 100 years is so much of a person's lifespan. I don't think I can meet them again. Subaru, but you still want to know what happened, right? Emilia, I'm sorry, I know it's selfish. But I think I'm the only one who needs to find out. Because I'm the only one who saw what happened there, and the feelings that were there, and what Juice and Mother felt. Emilia's eyes are sad as she imagines the two, but her mouth remains set in a gentle smile. There's her mother's name, and Juice. They're important memories for Emilia, and apparently connected to the old, utterly different witch cult. Subaru, got some really mixed feelings here, Juice-san. Mutters Subaru to himself with a sigh, somewhat resentful toward someone he's never even seen. Emilia feels familiarity and sorrow for the name, and hearing it gives Subaru complex feelings. If the witch cult hadn't changed its course from when Juice joined the fold, Emilia probably wouldn't have been put through so much crisis. If he was going to be Emilia's ally anyway, Subaru would appreciate if he could have stayed at her side from start to finish. is the breed of selfish resentment he finds himself thinking. Ram, I doubt I can be as kind as you, Emilia-sama. Although as quiet as ever, her voice is full of chilling animosity. Subaru's breath catches as he looks at Ram as she looks at REM. Her face is expressionless, but the glint in her eye is shockingly red. Ram, the witch cult's particulars have nothing to do with me. I won't object to your desires to hear their story, Emilia-sama. I won't, but do remember that my revenge is another matter entirely. Emilia, Ram. Ram, I couldn't care less about this cult or gluttony, but I return what I'm given, be it debts or enmity. Dismembering the heart-gouging hellion still won't be enough for me. Grisly rage overflows from Ram, her petite frame seeming to blur. As if a giant were there, emitting an overwhelming sense of presence indeed, as if an Onai were there. Ram, I'll eviscerate gluttony so thoroughly that the memory demands awe. It's less resolve and more death sentence. The recipient is absent and her tone is utterly calm. Nevertheless, this is unmistakably a death sentence. It feels like an icicle has speared down Subaru's spine, making him hesitate even to speak. Subaru. With that, silence falls upon the room. Even the noise from his fidgeting feels like it would break the tense atmosphere, so Subaru cannot move. What does shatter the stressful mood is in fact the person who caused it. Ram, it was unlike me to say that. She sighs, the tense atmosphere vanishing entirely. Subaru lowers his shoulders in relief. Subaru, no, it wasn't unlike you. The Ram I know was someone who did get violent when stuff involved her little sister. Ram, I see. Ram's statements had been disturbing, but she had definitely been thinking purely about REM when she spoke them. Subaru appraises it on that point alone, making him feel glad for Ram's sentiments. Besides, Subaru can't forgive gluttony either. If he can, then he wants gluttony's neck for himself, without even handing it over to Ram. The sensation of murder. The slipshod conclusion to his fight with Betelgeuse left very little direct feeling in Subaru's palms. Perhaps Subaru's hesitation toward taking a life could stymie him at the critical moment. But still, he cannot forgive gluttony, and he has the resolve to do it if it's to save REM. Subaru, we got really off topic. Subaru scratches his head, his dark thoughts not showing in his expression. Ram looks at him meaningfully and Emilia looks at him concernedly, but Subaru had managed to smile at both of them, surely. Ram, you're right. Now, since you're intruding on me as I enjoy my unexpected holiday, I'm sure your business must be suitably important. Subaru, why are you so audacious when pressuring people? Frederica's in your position, and she feels so apologetic about getting guest treatment that she's helping in the mansion. Ram, I'm wounded. And Frederica's the one failing to read the mood by working when she's being received as a guest. She can't stay composed when with Garf, and Klein is inciting her into it too. Subaru, Klein-san is? This is the name of the Mathers family's young butler who is tending to Subaru and the others. He is handsome, with a slender face, who exudes an incredible aura of grace and capability. He gives a similar vibe to Julius, but unlike Julius, Klein is polite and incredibly considerate. And so Subaru thinks it strange that Ram doesn't seem to think too fondly of him. Though perhaps that's just what everyone looks like to Ram when they're not Roswell. Ram, you should ask Frederica and Klein themselves about how poorly they interact. Anyway, I'd like to return to my reading, so do state your business quickly. Emilia, I'm sorry, we just keep on talking. I think Subaru mentioned this right at the start, but it's about Frederica and Garfield. Emilia valorously gets to changing the topic. Let's do something about Garfield and Frederica's awkward relationship, was a nice idea and all, but Subaru and Emilia found themselves absolutely stuck on what to do. Since neither of them are very experienced when it comes to mending sibling relationships. Subaru is an established only child, and so is Emilia. Neither of them have been blessed with siblings, so nothing comes to mind when it comes to non-parental blood relations. And in Garfield and Frederica's case they don't even have ordinary parental relations, but we'll leave that part aside. So they wandered around the mansion in search of advice and visited Ram, who stays in a fixed location. And Subaru considers her the closest sister he knows. Though her relationship with REM is gone from everyone's memory except Subaru's, he hopes that Ram might have something useful to say, considering that she and her sister had such a good relationship. And even disregarding that, Ram is childhood friend of Garfield and Frederica. Maybe something from an episode that Subaru wasn't around for will make her hit on an approach to fill this decade-long divide. Emilia almost gives Ram an expectant gaze, when her lips come to a halt. Subaru tilts his head at the frozen Emilia, wondering what happened, before following her gaze and freezing still as well. Ram, what? Ram narrows her eyes, looking terribly uncomfortable. In her hand she holds a book, at which Emilia and Subaru stare. The title, How to Grow Closer to Your Younger Sibling, is horrifically critical to the current affair. It seems that they aren't the only ones feeling clueless about sibling relations. Chapter 2, Young Souls and Watcher. Having learned that Ram is useless regarding sibling problems without her memory, but that she is nonetheless a good sister, time passes on for Subaru and Emilia with no good progress. Subaru, but don't you feel like Ram was being pretty unsympathetic? Emilia, don't say that. Ram has her own opinions. She's known them longer than we have, so that's probably the difference. Emilia smiles wryly at the pouting Subaru as they walk down the mansion hallway. They have left Rem's bedroom and are reflecting on the encounter as they venture about. Through Subaru's mind passes the words that Ram left them with before their departure. Ram, Garf and Frederica's relationship? It should be fine to just leave them be. They aren't children. Well, Garf is a kid, but he's not bereft of his own ideas. Though said ideas tend to be inaccurate. They'll manage something on their own. It's a rather ruthless judgment on Garfield, what with how fond he is of Ram. But it's possible that Ram regards Garfield as something like a younger brother. His crush could be called cute, were the feelings not so intense and violent. Poor Garfield, infatuated with a fortress of a woman. Emilia? What's wrong? Subaru, no, it's nothing. Was just reflecting that man, Garfield's not the only one looking at a tall hurdle. Emilia? Emilia tilts her head cutely. Subaru hates how her mind utterly fails to put together what his gaze and words mean. Perhaps the fact that he winds up forgetting it is one of those foibles of loving someone. Subaru, anyway, so Ram's out, who to consult next? Emilia, huh? You're going to keep trying? Subaru, well yeah. We haven't solved anything yet, and there's nothing manly about giving up. 'Cause you stumbled on the first step. Don't you want to improve their relationship too, Emilia Tan? Emilia, I do, but Ram knows them best, and that's what she said, so maybe that's the best thing to do. Subaru, leaving them be might solve the problem over time, but you can't forget that it's been a decade since they parted. I'm not going to wait another decade for them to reconcile. I want to give them a shove so they make up quickly. Subaru insists that they stick with the plan, while Emilia seems somewhat pressured by Ram's statement. That said, while Subaru does want Garfield and Frederica to reconcile, he also wants to keep this chance to do things with Emilia from escaping. Since no matter what Subaru does in this caper, it won't escalate into bloodshed. Could this heart, after all that protected trial and error, ever feel so light? Emilia, what happened? Subaru, you just burst into a grin. Subaru, no, was just thinking that mulling over things without being frantic about it is bliss. Wow. No matter how everything falls, there's no bloodshed and nobody dies. Emilia, Subaru. Subaru shoots her a thumbs up, his teeth sparkling, but Emilia looks at him with incredible pity. Subaru thinks back on his statement, figuring that he must have said something strange. And then shocks himself at what a brutal, inappropriate comment it was, and how impoverished his desires are. Subaru, disregard that, Emilia Tan. Emilia, it's okay. I know it's been hard. I'm sorry, I didn't realize how you felt. Subaru, maybe you should spend the day resting in your room. Subaru, no, not happening, and that reaction's for when you don't realize how I feel. Emilia gazes at him with sympathy. And, at that point in the conversation. So you're the ones making this racket, I suppose. Sighs a voice. Subaru looks over to the speaker, to find a girl in an extravagant dress standing there, Beatrice. She has come from the other end of the hallway, and stopped to look at Subaru and Emilia, her brows furrowed on her cute face. Beatrice, you two are certainly enjoying yourselves, in fact. I can hear you're arguing from the other end of the mansion, I suppose. Subaru, there's some sarcasm. If you're sad you're not included, then just say it. We'll let you deliberate with us in our profound discussion hour. Beatrice, who said anyone is sad about being left out, in fact. Don't just go saying whatever you want, I suppose. Beatrice crosses her arms, her cheeks red with indignation. Both Subaru and Emilia have to smile at how incredibly Beatrice the attitude is. About a week has passed since Subaru and Beatrice formed their contract. That said, nothing especially dramatic changed about their relationship. Subaru teases Beatrice like always, and Beatrice overreacts. These exact same exchanges unfold endlessly for these two. But Beatrice has been more out and about lately. And sometimes, as if remembering something, she comes to hold Subaru's hand. Subaru, and so on is what you say, but really you're here because you want to hold my hand. Oh geez, this poor girl's too much. Beatrice, don't distort Betty's actions by giving them these weird pretexts, in fact. Betty keeps touching you because circumstances demand it, I sue. Subaru, I suppose. Subaru, it is adorable how you reminded yourself to say that. Emilia, Subaru. Emilia cautions Subaru as Beatrice's face goes red. Subaru pokes his tongue out at Emilia and reaches out for Beatrice. Her hand lightly closes around his fingers before she rethinks it and timidly grasps his hand proper. It's what Beatrice always does. He feels her small fingers on his palm. This tickly, awkward touch is the fruit of Subaru's labor. But this time Beatrice does not do it, and instead she simply stares at Subaru's hand, hesitant. Subaru, what's up? I do wash my hands after going to the bathroom. Beatrice, I wasn't worried about that, but now that thought's going to be in my head and it's disgusting, in fact. No, it's something else. Beatrice glares in response to Subaru's unneeded comment, and she glances behind her. Subaru tilts his head at that when he hears the answer come from down the hallway. Where'd you go, Beatrice-chan? A voice calls from down the hallway, beyond a corner, searching for Beatrice. The voice is female, filled with affection and friendship. But hearing it makes Beatrice's shoulders hitch up. Beatrice, eep. Squeaks Beatrice, her eyes darting around before she dives into a nearby room. Subaru and Emilia watch on wide-eyed as Beatrice peeks out from behind the door. Beatrice, tell her that I'm not here, I suppose. Please, in fact. Subaru, hey. Beatrice, please, I suppose. With that, she silently shuts the door. Subaru shrugs while Emilia furrows her brows in confusion. And... oh. Subaru. A girl appears from beyond the bend in the hallway, her face lighting up as she comes darting over. With the skirt of her maid outfit fluttering, the auburn-haired girl trots near its Petra. Petra is also staying in this mansion following the incineration of Roswell's estate. Considering the danger that comes with being involved, Subaru had tried to convince her to go back to the village, but she refused to listen. Petra has been utterly focused on helping with odd jobs around this mansion as part of her maid training. What an ambitious, disciplined girl, Subaru thinks. As if complimenting Subaru's thoughts, Petra curtsies politely to Emilia. Petra, please forgive me, Emilia-sama. I present my apology for having raised my voice. And says that. The childishness she displayed towards Subaru instantly disappears, and Emilia's eyes widen at the maidly behavior. Emilia, it's okay. Don't worry. You can please relax, knave. Subaru, Emilia-tan, knave? Emilia is going to need to learn how to respond when others humble themselves around her. But putting aside that messy yet heartwarming conversation. Subaru, so, what's up, Petra? Something happened? Petra, no, nothing has happened, but since I've finished my work, I was thinking to entertain Beatrice-chan. But I haven't been able to find her. Emilia, Beatrice-chan, gosh. Emilia's breath hitches, and she puts her hand to her mouth as she holds in her laughter. Subaru also comes close to snickering. Beatrice, for all of her hauteur, has been dubbed with a chan by Petra. Subaru burst into laughter when he first caught them interacting. Petra, is there something the matter, Emilia-sama? Have I perhaps said anything strange? Emilia, no, nothing. I just thought that was a bit so funny. Petra, a bit but so? Sometimes Petra's childishness does come to the fore. Emilia gives her a smile and glances to Subaru, her gaze asking him what to do. Subaru pretends to mull over the issue. Subaru, right. Beatrice. She loves the attention, so I'm sure you have fun fussing over her too? Petra, I do. Beatrice-chan isn't honest at all. She's super cute whenever I'm with her. I don't think people like her should be left on their own. Subaru, why do you think that? Petra, 'cause she'd be lonely. You can't leave her there. Subaru nods to Petra's smart yet simple reply. It took a lot of words to get there, but ultimately it's the same reasoning by which Subaru dragged Beatrice out of the Forbidden Archive. Children see to the truth of things. Or really Subaru and Beatrice just argued at each other using child's logic. Petra, how come you're laughing now too, Subaru? Subaru, it's not that I'm making fun of you. It's just that you're so brilliant, Petra. Petra, really? Ehehe. Subaru pats Petra's head and gives her a nod. Then he puts his hand on the doorknob behind him, and swings the door open. Beatrice, wog. With a thunk, an eavesdropping loli gets sent to the floor. The loli pushes herself back up, her eyes teary and forehead red from the door belting against her. Subaru, the heck are you doing? Beatrice, more so what the heck are you doing, in fact? This hurts. This sincerely hurts, I suppose. It hurts and furthermore you broke your promise. Subaru, I didn't promise anything, and I didn't even say I'd do it. After taking careful consideration of who to support, I decided that supporting Petra'd be funnier. Beatrice, funnier. Funnier, he says, in fact. Just abysmal, I suppose. Complains Beatrice, rubbing her forehead while Subaru blocks his ears, pretending not to hear her. When a girl cuts into their exchange, Petra faces Beatrice directly, making Beatrice's mouth gawk open and pigtails bob. Beatrice, don't get the wrong idea, in fact. I wasn't hiding from you or anything. Petra, come on, Beatrice John. You're going to get told off if you play hide and seek in other people's mansions. Though I understand wanting to play so much you can't help it. Beatrice, what? Stop acting as though Betty were a child, I suppose. Though I might look like this, I am Fullian, Fullian. Petra, Fullian? Beatrice, never mind, in fact. In the end, Beatrice surrenders. Emilia looks surprised, and Subaru also closes his eye at the unfamiliar happenings. The entertaining thing about Beatrice and Petra's relationship is that somehow Petra is the dominant one. Beatrice always maintains a haughty, cocksure attitude when interacting with anyone. Subaru and Puck had been the exceptions, and now Petra has thrust herself into that count. For some reason, Beatrice can't interact with Petra using her normal demeanor. Not even she seems to understand why that is. But Subaru has spotted her holding hands with Petra, looking rather reluctant about the whole thing, several times now. Never mind what Beatrice thinks, to an outsider they're just a couple of young girls. And this is two girls with portents of feature beauty, holding hands. A charming spectacle. Petra looks slightly older than Beatrice. Perhaps it's happening because Beatrice struggles to counterbalance Petra when she behaves like an older sister. Petra, okay, let's go. We don't want to interrupt Subaru and Emilia-sama's work. And brother. Klein got some sweets for us, so let's go eat them together. In the dining room. Beatrice, oh okay, I suppose. I'll go, so you don't need to pull me along, in fact. Beatrice sends a pleading look to Subaru as Petra leads her out of the room by the hand, but Subaru cruelly replies with a thumbs up. Emilia waves her goodbye as Petra drags her away, still looking mad and with her tongue sticking out. That circumstances demanded skinship with Subaru will have to come later. Emilia puts her finger to her lip as she contently watches one girl abduct the other. Emilia, that is so surprising. I didn't expect Beatrice to be weak to Petra. Subaru, right? It stunned me at first. It's adorable to watch though, so I didn't say anything. And I think Petra's totally right. Emilia, she'll be sad if left alone? Subaru, I don't mind being with her all hours of the day, but that defeats the point of leaving the archive. If she's making memories, then the pages of her photo album ought to have as many people in them as possible. Since she has to compensate for 4 centuries of blank pages. If Subaru consumes all of the space in her album, it's going to get Sammy quick. Her memories need to be full of lots of people and lots of faces. Subaru believes it best to stand at her side as she clicks the shutter, sometimes slipping into the frame. Emilia, Subaru, sometimes you are so cool. Subaru, huh, what, seriously? What happened, what RNG was that? Emilia, it really is only sometimes though. Subaru scratches his cheek as Emilia giggles. While it was somewhat joking, compliments from Emilia inevitably get him excited. He wants to always be reminded of this feeling whenever he teases Beatrice. Gotta keep teasing her now. Subaru, feels like the aims and the means swapped places, but you do get that sometimes. Now, we got to see that heartwarming sight, so next is. Indeed, a heartwarming sight. The spectacle of two girls with their lovely souls, smiling as they join hands, that is this world's splendor. Effulgence. Emilia, eek. Just when Subaru starts moving to the next topic, a voice speaks up that makes Emilia yelp. Because the speaker's arrival is just that abrupt and unexpected. And their location is just as unexpected as their arrival. This character stands behind Subaru, so close that he can feel their breath on his neck, their expression nonchalant as they join the conversation. I do apologize for the surprise. But I could not suppress my occupational urge to present you with astonishing service. Misfire. Subaru, see Klein-san? Klein, yes, this is Klein. I do hope that I have not fouled your temper? Trepidation. A handsome, slender man gives them a perfect bow. His blue hair is just long enough to touch his shoulders, and he wears a monocle on his left eye. His starched, black butler suit seems to take joy in being his clothing as it perfectly displays its potential, his every movement so refined that Subaru unwittingly has to stand up straight. This man's posture is so perfect that it could be a match for Wilhelm's, but the aura that Klein exerts differs from the sword demon's. If Wilhelm gives the impression of a honed blade, then Klein is the flow of pristine waters. Material beauty is dissimilar to conceptual beauty. Though both soothe the mind equally. Subaru, it's kind of shitty to show up behind people out of nowhere, Klein-san, almost had a heart attack. Klein, should that occur, we will devote our utmost efforts into your resuscitation. There is no need to fret, for everything is well. Death's door. Subaru, Except that's no help at all. While Klein's polite gestures remain strong, his reply falls apart terribly. However, his current behavior gives no indication to his personality or capabilities. Klein is as excellent a servant as he appears, being the paragon butler of the Milord household. Although young, he keeps the mansion in order with his bold personality. And that isn't all, he's even capable of swordsmanship in an emergency. He is so skilled that, when they first met, Garfield tried to pick a fight with him. Guy's pretty fucking good. Though Klein ignored the duel invitation. However, for all of Klein's excellence, he does have some flaws. One of them is his demonstrated penchant for mischief. Another is... Emilia, Petra hasn't been any trouble for you, has she? I know that you're letting her participate in the work, but I'm still kind of worried. Klein, there is no need for worry. Petra is outstanding for a girl of her age. I await to see how her proficiency in beauty shall bloom. Envy. Emilia, I see. Thank goodness. Klein, however, she shall grow into an adult. Which I find a terrible shame. Chagrin. Klein furrows his brows, looking utterly disappointed. This is one of his flaws, and a big one. Klein is extremely interested in young girls like Petra and Beatrice. Putting it straight, he's into little girls a Lilicon. Klein, what could be the matter, Natsuki-sama? You look as though you've seen a prospective criminal. Have I perhaps done something untoward? Confirmation. Subaru, it sort of seems as though you're self-aware about it, considering how precise that comment was. I'm not really into younger girls, so you have that, but seriously, when they're that young. Klein, it appears that you could be under a terrible misapprehension. Smile. Smile, he says, while not smiling in the least. His attractive face darkens dejectedly as he adjusts his monocle, and he turns to face Subaru. Klein, do I have your attention? I do not admire Annerose-sama, nor Petra nor Beatrice-sama, because they are young. It is because I am infatuated with the promise and youth of their souls. To be enraptured by pure, immaculate souls is natural. And it happens that many possessors of such souls are young. Thus misapprehension. Subaru, well, great. Klein gives a speech to rebut Subaru, though Subaru tunes out for most of it. However, Klein's next words destroy that attitude of Subaru's. He looks at Emilia, and... Klein, in fact. Klein, my eyes perceive a similar luster to Emilia-sama's soul. Purity. Emilia, me? Subaru, goddamn geez, Klein-san. Emilia tilts her head. Subaru can only find himself shocked and awed at Klein's perception. It should not be possible to determine that Emilia is mentally much younger than she appears without investigating her background and upbringing. Klein's eyes have penetrated straight through that, and he has ascertained that Emilia is mentally a lowly. A Lilicon's nose is to be feared, thinks Subaru in dumb astonishment. Subaru, so then Louis-san or something be. Klein, her appearance is exceedingly darling, but her soul is matured. It is beyond the means of someone as callow as I to divine promise from someone so set in their ways. Recklessness. Subaru, amazing. It truly impresses Subaru that he can see through the lolligrany. Emilia has been party to this exchange, but doesn't seem particularly interested in Klein's fetishes. Emilia, Klein-san, there's something I kind of want to ask. Klein, please ask whatever you wish. Inquiry. Emilia, did Frederica used to work here before she started working in Roswell's mansion? Klein, indeed. Affirmation. Subaru furrows his brows, sensing that Klein was tongue-tied for a second. The hesitation makes Emilia blink too, but the conversation continues as is. Emilia, which means that you've known Frederica for a long time. Klein, Frederica and I have known each other for a decade. I was still a manservant who had only just begun work when the Margrave brought Frederica to the Milord household. We would have known each other since then. Old friends. Emilia, I knew it. Okay, so I have a question about Frederica. Is there anything she likes or dislikes that we can use as a starting point for her to reconcile with Garfield? Klein, a starting point for reconciliation. Rumination. Klein puts his hand to his chin, in thought. He looks pretty as a portrait even while ruminating. Subaru fiddles with his tracksuit zipper while lamenting, so hot guys can get away with being Lilicons. About the amazing differences in beauty. After a minute of thought, Klein nods with a quiet sigh. Klein, I shall make chicken the primary dish for Annerose-sama's next birthday. Plan. Emilia, where'd Frederica go? Klein, forgive me. Whenever I attempt to meditate upon her, my brain unfailingly rejects it. I'm afraid this is my idiosyncrasy. Beg your pardon. Emilia, do you maybe not get along with Frederica, Klein-san? Klein, preposterous. Denial. Klein shakes his head at Emilia. Klein, she is an excellent servant who conducts her work swiftly and accurately, and is also proficient in tact. Should you ignore that her appearance sullies her station, what demands the maid to be adorned in splendor and beauty, I have not any complaints about her. Indifferent. Emilia, I think I just heard something extremely prejudiced, but is that just me? Subaru? Subaru, no, it's not just you, it's just Klein-san. It seems like Klein's unrelenting prejudice springs from Frederica's appearance. While yes, the initial impact of it did startle Subaru, Frederica is actually both diligent and abounding in femininity. There's nothing wrong about her as a woman except her appearance. Klein, I sense that Natsuki-sama has reached the same conclusion as myself. SB. Emilia, did you? Subaru? Subaru, I'm trying to end my habit of probing for other people's flaws, so could you please not? Emilia-tan, your looks are a mega critical on me. Emilia, that's not what we were talking about, geez. But thank you. Says Emilia, her cheeks slightly flushed. These compliments seemed utterly ineffective before, but since Emilia finished the trial they're starting working on her somewhat, which is novel. Puck isn't around to give Emilia lessons on fashion anymore, and she's gotten into the practice of dealing with her own grooming and dress. Apparently she's been doing some trial and error on what looks stylish. Though naturally when she started thinking about chopping her silver hair short, everyone collectively yanked the brakes on it. Either way, it doesn't seem like they're going to get any useful information about Frederica from Klein. Subaru and Emilia sigh, hitting a quick dead end yet again. When Klein speaks up. Klein, simply as speculation. Klein, judging by what I have heard, could you be seeking an improvement to the sibling relationship between Frederica and Garfield-sama? Conjecture. Emilia, yes, we are. But neither me or Subaru have any brothers or sisters, so we have no idea what to do. We've been asking around, but... Klein, being that Frederica's only issue is her appearance, I believe that issues pertaining to Frederica that are unrelated to her appearance will resolve themselves if left alone. But it seems that you may find this stance unsatisfactory. And so I offer. Proposal. Both, proposal? Klein raises his finger. Subaru and Emilia tilt their heads in unison. For the first time that day, Klein smiles. Klein, if you are concerned about them, then ought you not speak to the person closest to them? Not Ram, but another? Opinion. Emilia, closest to them. Emilia claps her hands, her eyes shooting open as she finally hits upon this idea. Subaru reaches the same conclusion, but something is bothering him first. Which is? Subaru, not Ram? I'm pretty sure we only mentioned her ages ago, Klein-san. How long have you been listening to us talk? Klein, it is because I am the butler entrusted with the peace and chores of the milord household. Declaration. It kind of sounds like an answer, and also kind of doesn't. Subaru scrunches his face up while Klein bows respectfully. His conduct as a subordinate is so perfect that it overwhelms any observers. All Subaru can do is shut his mouth and look sour. Chapter 3, Pretty Girl, Pretty Lady, Pretty Granny. Subaru, and thus we hasten to speak with Lewis-san, who we figure knows them best. Lewis, I'd call your approach conscientious, all told. I don't mind your relying on me, but I don't gert much I can say on the topic. Subaru, meaning? Lewis, meaning I agree with Ram and Lil Klin. Their problem their problem. It's not something outsiders need to get too involved with. It doesn't look like Lewis is too interested in Subaru's proposal as she sips her tea. However, she is undeniably a key figure in this whole affair. Subaru is sticking his neck into their business with too little frivolity to back down that easily. Subaru, I get that their circumstances are an annoying mess. Since I've been involved in it, if only tangentially. Lewis says nothing. Subaru, but I don't think it's something to just leave alone. I mean, maybe it will resolve itself in time, but it's aggravating both to them and to onlookers how they're trying to settle things, but it just isn't working. If a third party can do something about it, then they should. Lewis, that sounds like a load of hard-nosed meddling. Subaru, well, I do have a reputation for being shameless and dense. Subaru puffs his chest out in pride, although it likely wasn't a compliment. Lewis smiles wryly at him. The two of them are in a corner of the large room given to Lewis, sitting across from each other at a table as they sip from their cups, silently wetting their throats with tea. When... Excuse me, guys? A voice calls to them from a short distance away. The speaker narrows their amethyst eyes, their gaze akin to glare as it pierces Subaru. Dissatisfaction laces the voice of the speaker, unincluded as she is in the conversation, Emilia. Subaru, what's up, Emilia-tan? I mean you're cute when you're angry, but your forehead's getting all wrinkled. Emilia, if you think so, then shouldn't you come and help? Geez. You're so mean, Subaru. You ninny. Subaru, who says ninny anymore? Subaru smiles at Emilia's proficient and adorable use of outdated language as he sets down his teacup. He looks again at Emilia and tilts his head at the situation she faces. Subaru, you can really call this a spectacle. A fantastical drama unfolding between a pretty lady and some pretty girls. Louis, you're gonna make me blush saying that. Subaru, you mingle too and it'll be a drama between pretty girls, a pretty lady and a pretty granny. Louis, you're gonna make me blush saying that. Subaru, seriously. It shocks Subaru that, just when he expected her to grumble at him, she accepts it. Louis's cheeks as she watches on with Subaru are faintly red. The two of them gaze at a bunch of Louises identical to the blushing Louis, surrounding Emilia in a mob. They brought 26 Louis doubles from Sanctuary in total. These are the subservient, non-sentient doubles who are not the representative Louis. Though the faction has no tasks for them, they cannot simply leave them sitting there, so they present another issue for everybody to mull over. And the biggest problem here is... Emilia, don't just look, Subaru, come help me. Subaru, I'd love to, but they're not gonna listen to me. You and Garfield are the only ones who can command them. Just gotta finagle them with some witty eloquent language. Emilia, I know, but we only just had a terrible fiasco when I told them to step away. Did you forget, Subaru? Subaru, nobody would forget a 3 days past organized search effort that went all the way over the mountains. Subaru thinks back on the debacle from 3 days ago. Crystals in Sanctuary govern the Doubles command right. One had been installed in the tomb and one in the laboratory, each of which recognized either Emilia or Garfield as right holders and presently continue to do so. Meaning that the Doubles remain in a doll-like state, unable to act without Emilia or Garfield's orders. They pay no heed to anyone else's instructions. Garfield says that, if they leave them without any tasks, they will literally sit there doing nothing until they die and disappear. The debacle from 3 days ago happened when Emilia, ignorant to the command rights limits, tried to have the Doubles spread out a little distance from the mansion by telling them to step away. The annoying part is that the Doubles have their own personal differences, and interpreted the command in slightly different ways. Some of them perfectly adhered to Emilia's intentions, some of them exited the mansion, and some of them sprinted far from the mansion into the distance. Were it not for Garfield's nose and legs, they might not have retrieved them all. They can't just leave these cute, doll-like girls to walk around undefended. And it's problematic if people start questioning the Doubles. Subaru, twins or triplets is one thing, but nobody'd believe in 20 sextuplets. Subaru doesn't remember what the Guinness World Record was, but it was probably less than 10. There's no point even considering it, there is no way they can use the siblings' excuse here. And as for why they have to come up with excuses in the first place. Louis, they were obviously made using forbidden techniques. Frankly said, it'd be an uproar if people found out what we were. Subaru, AAS figures. Louis, you're taking someone as a foundation point, and constructing Makodi of a similar nature to them to make them essentially you're making infinite soldiers. There's people out there who'll want that. Leaving aside the question of practicality there, they are useful for research. Since they're basically an infinite subject base. You can use the command right to keep them from rebelling, and they disperse into mana when they die so there's nothing to clean up. Subaru, which is all absolute shit. Louis, it relaxes us to know you think that, Lil Su. Subaru feels something indescribable as he watches Louis smile thinly. Repulsion that his acquaintance could be exploited, and aversion due to the ethical issue. Those feelings are why Subaru feels adverse to the concept. But when he dispels those feelings, and considers the technique detachedly, how long will his resistance really hold against the sheer convenience of it? Everyone, including him, pursues an easier and easier course. Hate being so weak, he thinks. Emilia, okay. So what am I meant to do? Emilia yells, having been somewhat excluded from the situation, as she hits her limit. The mob of Louises isn't doing anything, but the silent pressure they exert on Emilia isn't sanitary for her mental health. Subaru crosses his arms as he wonders what to do. Subaru, maybe try pacifying them with an order they can't misinterpret? Emilia, like? They went so far when I just told them to step away, so I don't know what to. Subaru, I think saying sit down would work? Emilia, Subaru, you're a genius. It's nothing that brilliant, thinks Subaru while Emilia asks the Louises to sit, and they each plunk themselves down on the spot. It feels like Emilia is the teacher at a kindergarten now that all these little girls are sitting cross-legged around her, but actually the situation is more desperate than that. They have to come up with some smart way to deal with this. Subaru has some relevant proposals he wants to make when Roswell returns, so now it's an issue of waiting for him. Subaru, since there's 26 of them, naming them after the letters of the alphabet might work to individuate and remember them all. Lewis, you look like you're up to some nefarious plotting again, Lil Sue. Subaru, nefarious plotting makes it sound bad. All I'm doing is working my brains so everyone I know reaches a happy conclusion. Subaru gives her a big grin. Lewis sighs, looking astonished. Did she find his efforts credible or not credible? Subaru decides optimistically that his smile just looked untrustworthy. When Emilia, freed from the swarm of doubles, approaches Subaru and Lewis. Subaru presents her with her teacup. Subaru, you did a good job, Emilia Tan. Putting in good efforts as always. Emilia, thank you. But compared to Garfield, I'm barely doing anything. Garfield does such good work, ordering them all whenever it's mealtime. Emilia takes a sip and sighs as she looks at the doubles. The people usually looking after these girls are the representative Lewis and Garfield, the other command right holder. Garfield especially is tending to the girls with exquisite care, ensuring that none of them starve to death or get stranded, grumbling about it all the way. He's had far more experience with them for he's been interacting with them throughout his time in Sanctuary. Though that's unlikely to console Emilia. Subaru, well, just gotta take it easy. Garfield's doing some amazing stuff, but I think it'd be nice to have a more advanced solution. Emilia, advanced solution? Subaru, I'll tell you once Roswell's back. Until then, care to soothe my mind by freaking out some more in a herd of little girls? Emilia, you are so mean. Emilia puffs out her cheeks in indignation, which is adorable. Either way, his plans are still in the draft stage, and thus unready for the public. He'll iron out more of the details before he reveals it and basks in the praise. Subaru, anyway, how about we leave the Lewis double problem for a moment and get back on topic? Lewis, my answer's still the same. I'm not thinking to do anything, much to get them moving. I think they're trying to keep from worrying me. They act like things going reasonably well between them whenever I'm around. Emilia, that is so saucy of them. Subaru, who says saucy anymore? Subaru averts his gaze to disregard Emilia's glare, and thinks about the wily siblings. They are equally unwilling to make Lewis worry. And they've figured out how to compensate for it without actually discussing it with each other. Though they know each other so well, they can't make that last step. The key reason for that has to be Subaru, yeah, it's because of their mother. Lewis says nothing. Emilia, their mother, you mean, the one who left them behind in Sanctuary when they were little? Subaru, I've only heard the second-hand story, and I haven't asked about what she was like. Actually no, Frederica told me she was extremely unlucky, but that's about all. I mean I figure it's a given, but you did know her, right, Lewis-san? Lewis puts her teacup to her lip, letting the time drag on and on. But this is not enough to escape Subaru and Emilia's focused gazes. She gives a long sigh, and without looking at the couple. Lewis, their mother, Ch.1-5, Tinzel, isn't a topic I particularly want to talk about. Subaru, so she's someone you'd rather not remember? Lewis, I didn't dislike her nothing. Liked her a lot actually. She had that friendly kind of charisma, and her circumstances were the unfortunate thing, which you can see since the misfortune didn't kill her. Her household was ruined and she was sold into slavery, then bandits attacked and destroyed the traders. The bandits took her home as their spoils, got her pregnant. It's essentially the picture of misfortune. Subaru. Frederica has told him all this before, but it's still a horrible story. Emilia has no words for how heartrending it is. Though that final part of the tale may have eclipsed her understanding. Lewis, but Ch.1 didn't end in misfortune. The bandits took a liking to her so she lived and raised her child. Until another band of bandits destroyed the first one, and they entertained themselves with her again. Subaru, most people wouldn't recover after all that. Lewis, but she did. The bandit group collapsed, she met Lil Roz on her travels and gained his patronage, entrusted Frederica and Lilgar to him, then left Sanctuary to search for Lilgar's dad. Subaru, she did? Garfield said he thought his mother abandoned them. Lewis, third's probably his weakness talking. Since there's hope in being abandoned. Subaru's breath catches at the seemingly inappropriate word, hope. Where in this tale is there any hope? Before Subaru can figure it out, Emilia lowers her eyes. Emilia, she isn't coming back because she abandoned us, means that their mother might still be alive, is that the hope? Lewis says nothing. Emilia, if she promised that she was leaving for a purpose, but still wasn't coming back, it's too frightening to think about. Lewis shakes her head, looking miserable. Lewis has told them the real reason why their mother left Sanctuary. And why had Ch.1's promise never been kept? The question lends itself to a horrible answer. Garfield has seen his mother's passing. And that fits everything perfectly. Emilia, I wonder if they know. Leacia left them after Frederica wears old enough to be self-aware. I doubt she's forgotten it. And Lilgar, well, who knows? Emilia, I think Garfield remembered too. Otherwise he wouldn't look so joyful when looking at Subaru. It's possible that Emilia's thinking of something different from Subaru, but he figures that the happening in Garfield's past, his farewell to his mother, has been resolved and reached conclusion. The problem is that Frederica and Garfield have not secured that closure equally. Frederica might still feel something very deep-rooted about the whole issue. It does seem like Frederica is the one avoiding Garfield. That's the impression Subaru gets when thinking back on their exchange. Subaru, incidentally, do you know anything about what happened to Leacia-san after that, Lewis-san? Lewis, I never asked about it. And that ain't a lie. Sometimes you just don't want to know the truth, and so it goes for me. Lewis averts her gaze, ignoring the truth that she has likely already grasped. Subaru is not heartless enough to call it weakness. A ripple crests through the dregs of tea in the teacup on the table. He watches the wave melt into nothing, a gloomy silence upon the scene. Subaru, I'm feeling that if this goes on, everything'll end as us prying further and further into their affairs like a couple of nosy rubberneckers, but how are your feelings on this, Emilia-tan? Emilia, I'd so rather avoid doing that. Subaru and Emilia leave Lewis's room and walk down the hall, as they consider their accomplishments, terrified that they may fail to produce any decent results. They would rather this not end as them uncovering gossip and indulging in rumors. Naturally, their top priority is to improve Frederica and Garfield's relationship, but it's just life that problems spring up when you're dealing with problems. Emilia, but since neither talking to Ram or Lewis-san went anywhere, maybe we're out of options. Since Roswell isn't back yet either. Subaru, if we're assuming that we shouldn't rely on the passive approach of it'll resolve itself over time, then we can say that the issue is probably family. But where their mom is, or rather, whatever happened to her after their goodbye, isn't the issue. It's their mental states back then compared to now, and the stances they held when they parted ways. Emilia, wouldn't it be easier to just lock them in a room together? Subaru, here I am in shock at Emilia-tan's unexpectedly barbaric plans. Subaru looks startled, but Emilia looks serious as she puts her finger to her lip. Emilia, I mean, right? Emilia, I think what they need isn't really time, but a reason to start talking. They've considered so many things over these 10 years, so if they get the time to talk about it, I'm sure they'll manage something. Subaru, HRNHMHM, but that feels passive too. It's not really any different from the majority opinion of it'll resolve itself over time. When people say it'll resolve itself over time, they mean that the conversation you're talking about will naturally occur during that period. Emilia, so why don't we make that conversation happen for them unnaturally? I know my idea was pretty extreme, but I think it's basically what Ram and Lewis-san are saying. That we just have to leave it to them while they're alone together. Emilia lifts her finger from her lip and gives it a wag. Subaru listens to her with his arms crossed and brows crinkled in deliberation. Is that really all they need to do? Subaru does understand what she's saying. In fact, it makes perfect sense. He's just troubling himself over simple anxieties. But is it really safe for their involvement to be so shallow? They don't have to prearrange things in more detail for this to work out? Nothing will hit any kinks and needlessly escalate in complexity? Emilia, Subaru. Subaru, nah. When Emilia pokes Subaru in the forehead, she looks up at him, brought back to reality. Emilia, I know you're a warrior and work so hard for everybody's sake. Subaru, you're going to make me blush saying that. Emilia, but I worry as much about you as you do for us. You need to know that you don't have to take everything upon yourself like this. They'll be fine. Subaru, I suppose. With everything dismissed by the word warrior, Subaru feels the weight fall from his chest. The burden in his heart was that kind of intangible boulder, which he had gone shouldering upon himself. Emilia, it'd make me happy if you trusted me, and went along with my ideas too sometimes. Subaru's shoulders untense as he sighs. Perhaps it's not the conclusion he was after, but it seems like events are going to wind up according with the general consensus of opinion. Subaru, okay. Then we'll figure something out and... Goodness, if it isn't Natsuki-san and Emilia-sama. What are you doing here? And just when he tries to adopt Emilia's plan, someone intrudes. A gray-haired young man carrying a massive stack of papers shows up before the two. Recognizing him, Subaru puts his hand to his chin in thought. Actually, of all the important people in the mansion, there is only one they haven't spoken to due to reasons other than absence. With that thought, Subaru considers how useful this man will be for tackling the problem, and nods. Subaru, okay. Then we'll figure something out and make that happen. Man, do you mind me asking why it feels as though I don't exist in this conversation? The shout from the familiar voice echoes loudly through the Milord mansion. Chapter 4, Birth of the Emilia Faction Internal Affairs Minister. While working away at the massive mountain of paperwork, Otto listens to Subaru and Emilia who sit on the reception sofa. He withdraws the needed documents from the pile, his quill pen occasionally darting over them. He scribbles formulas on a sheet of paper, does some kind of calculation before jotting them onto the paperwork and references nearby documents while stamping the first with a seal. With how smoothly his work progresses, and how frantically his eyes move, it's questionable whether he's paying attention to Subaru, but his occasional interjections suggest he isn't just ignoring them. Emilia looks impressed as she watches Otto work, Subaru sitting beside her as he explains what they've been doing. He finishes his speech at nearly the exact same moment that Otto wraps his pen into its holder. Otto, so you're looking to improve sibling relations, are you? Then if you'd like to consult me, I could tell you. Subaru, where's this going? Otto, you're seeking pertinent advice from someone with siblings, correct? Then I believe that instead of consulting this quagmire of only children, you'd be better off consulting me, what with my elder and younger brother indeed. Subaru finds himself overwhelmed by Otto's abounding confidence. Subaru has never asked about Otto's family makeup, but apparently he's the middle brother in a series of 3. So yes, Subaru and Emilia are indeed craving his advice. However, Subaru, but weren't you chased out of your house for being a bad son? It'd be one thing if you had good family relations, but advice from the black sheep isn't exactly helpful. Otto, who are you implying was so poor a son that their parents disowned them? I've never spoken even a single word of the like. My elder brother inherited the house, so I as the second eldest left to go trading of my own will. Perhaps it's unexpected, but I do believe myself cleverer than my brothers, you see. Subaru, what if you're the only one thinking that and your family's relieved the parasite's gone? Otto, does it somehow displease you for me to be here? Otto pounds his hands on the desk, his face red. Subaru shakes his head with an of course not. Merely the thought of Otto being absent is terrifying. It's just that Subaru found himself insulting him before he could thank him. Which is another one of Otto Swain's characteristic virtues. Emilia, but for some reason you feel really undependable, Otto Cohen. I wonder why that is. Even though you did so much to help. Otto, Emilia-sama too. Subaru's thoughts express themselves vicariously through Emilia, as she puts her hand on her chin, in thought. Apparently she is also a victim of Otto's virtues. This man's aura of dependability correlates negatively with his actual capacities. Subaru, look at how you're tormenting Emilia-tan, you sinful bastard. Otto, utterly unjustified. What did I even do? Emilia, so anyway, Otto Cohen. I'd really appreciate it if you could tell us what we should do about them. Otto, and right into the topic. Now aren't you two truly just master and servant? Otto spends a moment overreacting, before seeming to realize that his hysterics are utterly pointless. The back of his chair squeaks as he puts his hand to his gray hair. Otto, well, I believe the important thing to start with is their mutual feelings. From what I've seen, Garfield doesn't look to be the problem. His stubbornness is akin to a child's, and I imagine that he'd like to reconcile as he loves his family. Emilia, I think so too. Garfield wants to make up. But Frederica's having trouble approaching him. Otto, Frederica-san must be in a somewhat difficult position. She is the elder sibling, so as the superior she needs to let Garfield have his way if they're to reconcile. But from what I've heard, it doesn't seem that Frederica-san has erred. She may simply be exhibiting her sisterly generosity. If we consider her capacity to tolerate the younger's tantrums as the crux of this affair, what's the matter? Subaru stares at Otto as he neatly arranges his argument, and shakes his head when Otto complains. Subaru, no, you hit me with a way more serious opinion than I expected, and I'm stuck on where to throw in jokes. Otto, it's a serious matter that deserves serious consideration for a serious conclusion. Subaru, please forgive me. I'm too incompetent to play off your convoluted lead-up. Otto, are you trying to resolve problems or to encourage them? Of course Subaru wants to resolve them, but it hurts to defy his primordial desires. Otto and Subaru's conversation aside, Emilia nods admiringly in reply to Otto. Emilia, then. Emilia, we have to address Frederica's feelings first. Otto, I believe so, yes. It doesn't seem that Frederica-san will exacerbate the situation by deeming Garfield unpardonable. And honestly, I doubt anything so finicky will be necessary for this. It's one of those problems that time can res. Subaru, we don't want time to resolve it, and that's why we're trying to hurry it along. Did you even listen to me all the way to the end? I swear. Otto, I shouldn't have to be hearing this. Sensing that Otto is reaching the exact same conclusion as everyone else, Subaru snorts somewhat mockingly. Otto is indignant and Subaru harries him further with, "Subaru, so where would you show off that older sibling magnanimity, if it were you? You mentioned a younger brother, so surely you've had a fight where you showcased your broad-mindedness. That's the tale I want to see here, sing." Otto, if you'll pardon me on the seeing and singing, yes, a tale. Honestly, my family was rather harmonious. My siblings were good people, my parents were kind, and, hold on, have we ever actually fought before? Subaru, useless. Otto, why on earth are you saying that? What is so wrong about a peaceful family? Are you suggesting that relationships are illegitimate if they never once involve fights? That's ridiculous. What is there to complain about peaceful relationships with no great flaws? Subaru, well, it's the worst card you could have played in this situation. Just when it seems like Otto's going to come up with something poignant and useful, he plays a zero. Seeing that Otto can counterbalance even Subaru's ridiculousness, he probably never got so enraged that he started slinging curses and insults around pertaining to issues of family. Or perhaps everyone in the Swain family shares the same bullyable temperament as Otto. A home where life was peaceful but only because no tormentors were around in the empty Eden. Subaru, this poor, sheltered young lad. Otto, it feels like you are insulting me immensely, but perhaps that's just my imagination. Emilia, ho ho ho. Otto yells at Subaru, who lets his imagination spread its wings. When Emilia, watching the exchange, puts her hand to her mouth as she fails to suppress a smile. The two men fix their gaze on Emilia. She shakes her head. Emilia, no, I'm sorry. It's just that you look like you're getting along so well, kind of like brothers. Otto, I'm rather sure that my brothers were kinder to me than this. Subaru, don't say that, big bro. We always treated you like this, brother, you just didn't realize. Face the reality, my brother. Otto, oh shut up. Otto has already exhausted the words and willpower needed to reply. Subaru pouts at him as he incessantly continues, brother mine, dear brother, broum, browski, bub, brosef, esteemed brother my elder, and so on. Emilia gives a clap of her hands. Emilia, what do you two always do when you reconcile? I think Otto-kun always concedes, but figuring this out might bring us closer to the answer. Subaru, it's amazing how naturally that turned into Otto always conceding. Emilia, what if you try letting him win, Subaru? Subaru, I even supposing I yield to everyone else in the world, am absolutely never, ever yielding to Otto. Otto, oh shut up. Barks Otto at Subaru's atrocious little drama, rubbing at his temples as he thinks. It seems like he is seriously considering Emilia's idea. Otto, what do I do when I argue with Natsuki-san, HRM? Subaru, give up usually. Otto, the answer didn't even bear thinking, and now even I'm wondering what I'm doing. Otto cradles his head atop the desk as Emilia stands up and pats him consolingly. While jealous about Emilia's kindness, Subaru judges that he won't be able to get it himself in this scene and bats at his lap before standing up. Subaru, well, that did help. We'll try Frederica first, and depending how that goes we'll judge how we'll enact Emilia's plan. Otto, you realize that this is merely you fussing and you may be breaking your back for no reason? Subaru, I still think it's a lot better than actually breaking your back. You disagree? Otto, ha. Otto gives a resigned sigh. The way his mouth relaxes into a smile is essential his answer to the question. Emilia must also perceive the same thing as Subaru in Otto's expression. She stretches easily on the spot and gives Otto a smile. Emilia, well, Subaru, and I'll be going now. I'm sorry we interrupted you when you were so busy. Otto, no, I'm the one who invited you. Also I am surrounded by suffocating mountains of paperwork. The occasional breather helps to make it easy. Otto's expression snaps into awareness. Otto, hold on, why am I working so frantically on Margrave Mathers's feudal paperworks? At some point I get asked to assist with some municipal tasks, and then am permitted to inspect even the territory's administrative logs. I'm sure I was only trying to secure a quote for the prices of that oil. Subaru, oops, Emilia Tan. We stay any longer, and we'll be impeding Otto's work. Let us vacate the room while happily holding hands. Emilia, huh? Oh, yes let's. Otto puts his hand to his forehead, beginning to feel bewildered about his current circumstances when Subaru and Emilia abandon him. Subaru takes advantage of the moment to grab Emilia's hand and exits Otto's office. And just when Subaru attempts to flee the room, his hand on the door. Otto, oh, Natsuki-san. Subaru, HM? What? Just relax. You're not sitting there because of any mistake or hypnotism or powerful suggestion. You have merely been beguiled by circumstances, conversational finesse, and Subaru's sentence cuts off halfway. He cannot keep joking, for he senses something grave in Otto's gaze as he looks at Subaru. As though he is trying to talk about something important. Subaru shuts his mouth, and Emilia tilts her head. Otto looks at the two while a mere microsecond of hesitation flashes through him. But it all disperses when Emilia glances back. Otto, no, never mind. Subaru, come on, I'm curious now. If you're gonna say something, then say it. Otto, I would like to say it, but, well, we'll say that presently. It would be like trying to hold a cloud. We'll discuss it once things begin to look more hopeful. Since I cannot tell yet whether it would help you or just bring you unease. Otto scratches his head as he explains his hesitation. Subaru tries to make Otto change his mind by silently staring at him, but he just seats himself and retrieves his quill. Otto, I'll be returning to my work, so I leave Garfield's case to you. When the military cabinets are not functioning properly, the civil cabinets in the back are too anxious to work. Subaru, got it. But when you can say whatever that was, do Minister of Internal Affairs. Otto, why of course IW, Civil Cabinet. Minister of Internal Affairs? Subaru, let's go, Emilia Tan. We'll just be bothering him if we stay any longer. Leaving Otto behind as he begins troubling over the change in his position yet again, Subaru hurriedly pulls Emilia along by the hand and leaves the room. Emilia's eyes dart about in confusion, and she glances back at Otto the moment before the door closes. Emilia, Otto Cohen, good luck with your work. Unclear whether she's worried for him or giving him a boot in the ass, Emilia calls out to Otto as she leaves the room. Having left Otto's office, Subaru and Emilia's course of action grows more definite. Or really, they already had a defined course when the foreign element called Otto's opinions butted in, and now they're moving ahead with a plan just as definite as before. Subaru, thinking about it, that was a complete waste of time. Emilia, don't say that. Otto Cohen's story was, well, it was, yes, it helped. Subaru, your unmaskable honesty shows in that question mark, and it's adorable. Emilia fails in her desperate attempts to back up Otto as Subaru praises her and focuses on searching for Frederica. Anyway, the problem with the siblings is the sister. Garfield's already made up his mind. Now is just to give Frederica impetus to make up hers, then. My, if it isn't Emily and Subaru. May I ask what you are doing? Subaru, weg. Emilia, A voice calls from behind them. Subaru's breath hitches awkwardly to a stop, and Emilia plainly shows her surprises as she glances back. Their gazes land on a girl in a dress with her navy hair in a braid. She is less than 10 years old, even younger than Petra or Beatrice. She's identical to Beatrice in that she wears an extravagant dress, but hers is decorated more simply than the pigtailed girl. Unfitting to her youth, her eyes are stern and her face is dignified. This girl's name is Annerose Milord. She is scion of the Milord family, which is looking after Subaru's group, currently acting as lord of the manor in the true lord's absence, and the one receiving Subaru and the others. While Klein and the other excellent members of this household attend to arrangements and the like, Annerose is the one giving the orders, and she is suitably bold in her bearing. A statesman's condescending mien in the form of a child. This is the Milord family of sorcerers, split from the main household of the Mathers family, what belongs to Roswell. Annerose already has all the backbone needed to inherit this house. Lovable childishness is something she lacks, which is seemingly why Subaru has trouble with her. It feels like, when he's facing her as another individual human being, he is being far eclipsed in refinement by a girl about 10 years his junior. But regardless of all that, Emilia's reaction is very clear. Emilia, ugh, and how many times do I have to tell you that I'm not Emily, I'm Emilia? And, why do forgive me, Emily? Though you are at fault here for hesitating in your speech when you first introduced yourself. I find Emily an easier and cuter name than Emilia. Emilia, really? I mean, I don't really mind it either, but I guess there's no choice. And with that, Emilia permits Annerose to use this nickname. Emilia has got along strangely well with Annerose since they met. Ask why, and they weirdly seem to just suit each other. Annerose's sentiments seem similar to Emilia's, as she displays not the slightest negativity even around the half-elf. She could be counterbalancing it with her mental capacities, but that in itself presents a problem when considering Emilia's age. And, now what is it you're doing with Subaru, Emily? Having a tryst? Subaru, does it look like one? Does it? Well, oh dear, we've gotten so close that it looks like a tryst. You're allowed to blush when the shyness takes you, Emilia Tan. Emilia, no, that's not what we're doing at all. All we're doing together is some nefarious plotting. Subaru, you know exactly how I feel and you just cast it aside, geez. Annerose looks extremely interested as she asks her question, and Emilia easily shakes her head in reply. It appears that Annerose hadn't been expecting especially anything, for she looks condescendingly at Subaru with an "I see" and breathes a sigh. Her eyes are definitely mocking Subaru's ineffectiveness. But Subaru can't see himself as being at fault. He has constantly been flirting at Emilia, and she's just gotten better at ignoring it. "And I shall inquire into your nefarious schemes later, for have you seen Klein anywhere? I need him, and he is utterly missing." Emilia, Kleinsan was watching over Petra and Beatrice just a moment ago. And, phrasing truly is the crux of matters, Emily. Annerose grimaces, seeming to infer everything from that statement alone. She's known Klein for a long time, so she must know full well his disposition. After all, his tenacious lowly soul is usually fixed entirely on his master, Annerose. There's no need to inquire about his resilience or keenness or hopelessness. "Emilia, he said he bought sweets for them, so they should eat. I wonder if he bought any for me. It's kind of so bugging me. And, I doubt that Klein would be so impolite, so surely there are some for you. He already visited myself and presented me with tea as well." "Emilia, did he? I'm so excited." Emilia clasps her hands together in joy while Annerose pleasantly watches. They are in the complete opposite positions to their heights and ages. It is a heartwarming scene, but Subaru has to tilt his head when Annerose notices him doing this, and narrows her blue eyes. "And you seem to have time available, so I'm sure you wouldn't mind. Would you care to accompany me for a request of mine?" "Subaru, hey now. We might look like we have free time, but we actually don't. What's actually happening with this apparent free time is that we're using this period to substantiate a definite course into doing something productive for abating future troubles which..." "Emilia, what's your request? I don't mind so long as it's something I can help with." While Subaru starts spinning the long-winded excuses, Emilia thoughtlessly accepts. Annerose gives Emilia a smile, looking at the pair with eyes so mature they could not conceivably be a 9-year-old's. "And there is a man of whom I would like to shock, and a maid of whom I have long known who I would like to conciliate." Chapter 5, Annerose Trap and Brother-Sister Relations. Why are they readily going along with the nefarious plots of a 9-year-old? Subaru watches the back of the small girl leading them down the hallway, annoyed at his own failure to prevent this. Annerose milord. Being from a branch of the Mathers household that Roswell heads, she shares many distinct characteristics with him, such as her notably navy hair and blue eyes. Her hair is in a crown braid, but since Subaru doesn't know what the hairstyle is called, he mentally refers to her as Braid Loli. She possesses a keen intelligence unfitting for a 9-year-old. Her cleverness and wits do make her seem a relative of Roswell's, but the thing most reminiscent of Roswell shows through. "And Emily, would you care to hold my hand?" Emilia, huh? "Oh, sure, and so I oblige. Also, Emily, would you care to let me hug you?" Emilia, huh? "Oh, sure, and so I oblige. Also, Emily, would you care to carry me in your AR?" Subaru, enough. Subaru gets Annerose, seeking hand-holding and hugs and upsy-daisies, away from Emilia. Emilia's eyes widen. Annerose brushes off her lap, undeterred, before exaggeratedly patting at her shoulders where Subaru touched her. "And how brutishly you separate people who desire to touch one another, Subaru." "Subaru, where'd you get those statistics?" Questionnaire looked to be about walking the Milord estate alone to me. "And you're limited your stature must be, Subaru, if you are unable to overlook a child's endearing mischievousness." Subaru, except I would have kept my mouth shut if it was just childish mischief. Annerose coolly attempts to justify her actions. Despite her words, she is still trying to grasp Emilia's hand whenever the opportunity appears, so Subaru can't get careless. Annerose is a blood relative of Roswell's, a prodigy beyond her 9 years. And her idiosyncrasy is for some reason, she likes Emilia way too much. Ever since the day that the group came to stay in this mansion, and they introduced themselves, Annerose has shown inordinate fondness for Emilia. Emilia is a gullible airhead, so she may view it as a cute show of affection, but Subaru views it otherwise. After all, she's related to Roswell. While his demi-human fancy has been overthrown by his actual echidna fancy, it may not be the same for his relative. Many of the servants in the Milord household are demi-humans. Ones that Roswell assembled from all over his lands who have apparently suffered persecution, and are effectively taking asylum in the Milord residence by Roswell's will. Considering that Annerose was born and raised in this environment, demi-humans are a familiar presence for her. So, while she isn't prejudiced against Emilia the half-elf, her friendliness is excessive. Put simply, Subaru is trying to keep Annerose from stealing Emilia. And Annerose is trying to keep Subaru from monopolizing Emilia, making them rivals for Emilia's affections. Although, Emilia, come on, Subaru. I don't know what's rankling you, but you can't be mad at and like this when she's still so little. You're being immature. Subaru, who says rankling anymore? No, I mean, never mind that. Look, Emilia-tan. Plainly said, Annerose's gaze isn't the kind you can dismiss as her still being young and... Emilia, no excuses. I'm so sorry, Anne. I think Subaru's still flustered from being in someone else's mansion. Subaru, and it still applies even when you act like I can't settle into unfamiliar beds. Subaru and Emilia have disparate stances toward Annerose, so whenever the topic gets onto how they feel about her, it turns into one of these fruitless arguments. Why can't Emilia notice how cloying Annerose's gaze is? Subaru, I bet that it's one of those things where only people aiming for Emilia-tan's affections can notice when others are doing the same. Yes, that's definitely it. And, Emily. Subaru has just confessed that he lusts for you. How indecent. Subaru, your word choice is the indecent thing here. How are you only 9? While Beatrice is only superficially offensive, Annerose actually is offensive. Subaru could dismiss that indecent as a simple riposte, supposing it came from Beatrice's mouth, but somehow it feels like a real insult when Annerose says it. Emilia, how come you two can't get along? It's so baffling. Subaru, it's because we both L. Emilia, you both? Subaru, MHN. Emilia tilts her head. Subaru cannot get the rest of the sentence out. He stated his fondness for her countless times, but voicing it around other people makes it feel cheap. Also, he's saying it unintentionally while running off momentum, which makes it both cheap and embarrassing. In the corner of his eye, Annerose smiles victoriously. And now then, I will refrain from teasing Subaru further. For let us speak inside my room, which we have reached. Says Annerose to pure Emilia and red-faced Subaru. Abruptly, Subaru realizes that they have walked down the whole of the hallway, and indeed stand before an overly ornate door. It's Annerose's room. Apparently Emilia has been invited here many times before, but this is Subaru's first venture here. Annerose takes Emilia's hand and easily moves to welcome her into the room. But Subaru intervenes and pulls the brakes on that. Subaru, wait. Annerose's room is such a fishy series of words, so I'm going in first. And Hugh. Very well, proceed. You are free to do what you wish. While she does seem bothered at first, Annerose concedes to Subaru with a sigh. Subaru puts his hand to the doorknob and, slightly tense, enters the room. Where? Klein, I have been awaiting your presence, Natsuki-sama. Tea and biscuits have been prepared. Please do find yourself a seat and relax. Powwow. Klein welcomes him with a formal bow. Stunned speechless, Subaru glances back, to see that Annerose looks utterly unfazed. Emilia, Klein-san. But I thought you left to go eat with Beatrice and Petra? Klein, so I did, Emilia-sama. However, it appeared that the mistress found it in her mind to hold a tea party in her room, and thusly, I attended to those preparations. Urgency. Emilia, you're right, and did say something like that. Klein, indeed, the mistress so thought of me. Perceptiveness. Emilia peeks her head out from beside the frozen Subaru as she speaks with Klein. But it seems their conversation doesn't quite mesh. It's almost like Klein said thought of me instead of asked of me. And, it shall drive you to lunacy, should you attempt to rationally comprehend Klein's peculiarities. It is best for the mind that you simply accept it. Klein, I am always vigilant to remain one step ahead of my summons. Objective. How the hell does vigilance achieve that? Is what Subaru's thinking, but Annerose and Emilia seem unbothered as they start taking their seats. While mentally tilting his head, Subaru joins the tea party too. And, seeing that Klein has prepared the tea, we may proceed with our conversation. Klein, the one regarding the bettering of Frederica and Garfield-sama's relationship. Conciliation. Subaru, Klein-san, are you one of those butlers where there's actually several of you? Klein, that position has already been filled by Louis-sama. Rehash. Klein seems to think that his inclusion in the conversation will just stymie it. He readies tea and biscuits for everyone, before going to a corner of the room where he stands as still as a statue. His gaze locks onto Annerose, but she ignores it, long used to it. And now Klein's assessment is correct, this regards our mutual interest in swiftly bettering Frederica and Garfield's relationship, would be a valid thought? Emilia, yes, that's right. We've been racking our brains trying to do something, but we haven't really come up with any wonderful ideas. It's been a real kerfuffle. And, you're adorable when you're stressed, Emily. Then, now that you have ventured about the mansion to discuss the issue, and found yourselves at a standstill, you have come to me. Subaru, stop subliminally throwing your ulterior motives in there. Annerose, nonchalant, looks utterly unaffected by Subaru's jab. Either way, she seems to understand Subaru and Emilia's situation, which saves on the exposition. Subaru, but anyway, you're looking to have them make up too? What's the occasion? Everyone else just insisted to let time resolve it. And perhaps because I am less inclined to resignation and less accustomed to waiting? I must say that the people you spoke to are largely of that disposition. Subaru, frank, aren't you? No, but we also asked Otto. And then I amend that to include those ignorant to success. Subaru, harsh. And how sad Otto is that Annerose has managed to get this impression of him when they've only known each other a week. But it's best that Subaru keep silent, considering that he can't refute her. And I cannot deny that time will resolve the issue. A divide of 10 years separates them. Given another decade, the issue shall resolve itself. But that is far too protracted. Why 10 years? That's the same length of time since my mother and father last kissed. Subaru, GGGGGGGN? Halfway through an unchildlike screed, she abruptly hits a childlike conclusion. Subaru groans, unable to keep up with the sudden shift in gears, prompting Klein to put his finger to his mouth in request of silence. Subaru doesn't have a complete grasp of the situation, but perhaps her knowledge in those topics actually is that of a 9-year-old. Though he'd rather not probe into it, since Emilia is right here and also under the exact same misapprehension. And, care to explain that bizarre groaning of yours, Subaru? Subaru, it's nothing. Just some phlegm and despondency stuck in my throat. And, I see. What tribulations puberty brings. Regardless, I have no intentions of making them wait for a decade. Emilia, we're thinking the same way. But do you have any ideas, Anne? And what were your thoughts on the issue, Emily? It's replying to a question with a question, but regardless, Emilia furrows her pretty brows and puts her finger to her lips. Emilia, Emilia, I think they do want to make up. I feels like Garfield's trying to make time so they can talk, and though Frederica's uncomfortable, I think she does want to talk. And, I see, understood. And so? Emilia, and so I've been wondering if it'd be easier to just lock them in a room together. Subaru, sure are going for the barbaric plans, huh, Emilia Tan? While Subaru has no better ideas, it's shocking to hear it coming from Emilia's mouth. Also, he does endorse the idea, but there are some questions to be had with it. Particularly, Subaru, I mean, we could throw them in a room, but those two can bust out of basically any room when working together. I'd prefer we didn't destroy half the mansion doing this. So instead of a busted mansion, we have a week to get them hanging out together. What is this, a speed run? Emilia, then what should we do, Subaru? Should I use ice to make a room that we can lock them in? Subaru, I don't think we need to use such extreme conditions to revive their family love, no. Just, look. Something like, have them go into a room while sharing the exact same goal. Emilia, the same goal. Emilia tilts her head, puzzled. Subaru manages to get away from any criminal ideas, but his proposition doesn't go any further than that. He's conceived of making them share a goal, but has no concrete idea of what it would be. Should they defeat some monster that they can only take on together? Where exactly are they going to find such a convenient monster? And, in truth, my thoughts are identical to Subaru's. Subaru, huh? You know where to hire cyclopes and chimeras? And, never mind. Annerose gazes scornfully at Subaru, who apologizes by poking out his tongue and dunking his head. The 9-year-old sighs while Emilia's cheeks grow flush, eyes lit with expectation. And, we share the same thoughts when it pertains to making them share a goal. But I expect that what we know about them differs, and so differs the ideas we conceive, Emily. Emilia, what we know about them. And, for you have greater knowledge of Garfield than Frederica. While I have known Frederica for surpassing 8 years. That fanged face has been familiar to me ever since I've been aware. Subaru more or less understands what Annerose is trying to say. Her relationship with Frederica means that she can supply the information needed to fill the gaping hole that Subaru couldn't address, that is, what common points could lead to a common goal between Frederica and Garfield. Subaru, you're sure this'll work? And, provided that I may secure helpers, yes. Now Frederica presents no issue, but Garfield does. Subaru, Garfield does? And, should Garfield's personality be exactly what I have observed over this handful of days, then we should see no issues. Subaru doesn't know how intensively Annerose has paid attention to Garfield's attitude, but as far as he can tell, Garfield's been entirely himself during his stay here. He isn't being pointlessly stubborn like he was in Sanctuary, or trying to hide his 14-year-old immaturity. Subaru can assure that much. Subaru, Garfield's being entirely genuine, so no issues there. And, excellent. Next is the issue of helpers. Perhaps we might enlist help from Louis-san, their family. Subaru, from Louis-san? She's who you'd name first if listing people most related to them. But she didn't seem entirely cooperative, and it's unknown whether she'll entertain this. Regardless, Annerose seems to think otherwise and gestures her butler over. And, Clyde, we may delay preparations for this evening's dinner by 2 hours and use the kitchen. Proposal. And, I see. Very well. Do inform whoever's tending to dinner of that. Clyde, as you command, I swiftly shall. Haste. After that quick exchange, Clyde silently exits the room. Subaru and Emilia watch on in surprise while Annerose takes a sip of her tea, smiling. And now, let us see this issue quickly done away with. For others yet remain who must be tended to. She says, plunging Subaru and Emilia deeper into confusion. The second that Garfield enters the kitchen and spots that unfamiliar stature, he sighs, recognizing that he's been caught in a trap. Garfield, fucking everyone's getting so over fucking involved. Despite his cursing, a smile arises on his face. Garfield's nose is custom made. His sense of smell is so strong that it bears no comparison to the average man's, and he caught the scent before he even entered the room. That he nevertheless kept himself unaware is Garfield's final speck of stubbornness, or perhaps his pride as a man. Garfield scratches his head while the woman glances back, and calls to him in unfamiliar voice. Before Garfield stands a woman with long, lustrous blonde hair. She is taller than him, and her build is assuredly robust. The horde of fangs decorating her mouth, combined with her powerful frame, makes her seem somewhat savage and violent. Were it not for her gentle voice and the tender gleam in her eyes, people would constantly be getting the entirely wrong impression of her. Frederica Baumann is how she's been introducing herself, or so Garfield Tinzel hears. Tinzel is the name of their mother, and Baumann that of her father. Garfield doesn't know why Frederica insists on using her father's surname, and has opted not to think about it. He doubts that those who devised this meeting took those complicated sentiments into account. Or perhaps Garfield is just exaggerating the whole thing, and to outsiders it doesn't look like a big issue. Garfield, ain't often I see you here, sis. Frederica, and I could say the same. To think that you would find yourself here, dinner has not yet been prepared, you will find nothing here to pilfer. Garfield, I ain't here fair food. Stop treating me like a damn kid. Frederica, but is it not childishness to balk when treated as a child? And I suspect that you are still young enough that you would desire such babying, Garfield, nah, M14M over that hump. Who th fucks a baby here? Feeling pricked, Garfield howls in rejection. Frederica shakes her head at Garfield's overreaction and returns her gaze to the front to look into the kitchen. Frederica, I'm occupied with a task at the moment. Garf, I cannot devote all of my time to relaxation as you can. Garfield, ain't like I'm spending all my amazing time playing round either. And I ain't here to kill time. Think I'm here fair th same reason as you, sis. Frederica, the same reason? Garfield, looks like you got asked by someone else though. By those words alone, Frederica seems to figure it out. Frederica, so that's it, she mutters in comprehension. Frederica, I did think it peculiar. Out of nowhere, Annerose-sama began saying that she would die should she not have one of my meat pies. Garfield, how th hell did that manage to trick you, sis? Frederica, what did they say? No, what did grandmother say that brought you here? Garfield, sh said if she ain't getting one v my amazing meat pies she's gonna go more senile. Frederica, I also must wonder how you managed to find credibility in that statement. Garfield shuts his mouth. Hearing her say it does make him question it, but he had been sincerely worried so there's nothing to do. Garfield, well maybe why just can't understand seeing as you gave up on looking after her. Ain't weird t'all fair ert show up a skin f dinner's ready yet even after sh just ate. Course I'd fucking worry. It's actually a sad misunderstanding coming from the fact that, when the Lewis personality changes her rotation to the next one, the new Lewis doesn't inherit memories so extensively as to discern whether dinner happened or not. But Garfield will never notice that and neither will Frederica. The siblings concerned for Lewis's mental health compounds. However, Garfield's statement pricks Frederica in a different manner than described. Because, although unintentionally, he struck on the issue of her decade-long absence. Frederica, indeed. I never returned to Sanctuary even once over that decade. And you're the one who protected Sanctuary during that period. I have no right to speak as if I know what happened there, or what has come of grandmother. Garfield, no, that ain't what I was mayin' to say with that. IW's just. Frederica. Frederica glances back, forcing Garfield to face her again. Her face remains unfamiliar. It's been a decade. During all that time, Garfield's mental image of his sister remained constant from 10 years ago. Even though he's had this reunion and spent some time with her, he is having trouble accepting it. And the situation's the same for Frederica. She must be viewing him with trepidation, just as he views her. But it bothers Garfield. Why is her trepidation casting waves as intense as his own? What was it that he made her feel? Garfield. With that gaze upon him, Garfield breathes a sigh. The answer thunks into his heart. Got it. Crap, he got it. He knows exactly what the emotion in Frederica's eyes mirrors. It's the same look that Lewis would occasionally have, back in Sanctuary. The same look that Garfield would see on his own face, reflected upon the water. Which means that it's melancholy. Combined with apology. Garfield, course it'd be. Garfield had assumed that the events from 10 years ago had been resolved. Inside the tomb, he remembered the goodbye with his mother from when he was young. He now understood what his mother felt as she left them, and that resolved the issue for Garfield. He assumed it had been equally resolved for Frederica. But it's not. What happened in the tomb only affected Garfield. Garfield came to understand his feelings for his sister and his mother's love. He never told or informed his sister of them, distant as she was. And so Frederica gazes at Garfield without any resolution to what happened a decade ago, unsure of what to say. Even though she has matured, her gaze is identical to what it was 10 years ago. Garfield, sister. 1. Frederica. Garfield, I'm sorry I didn't say anything. But it's okay. I'm okay. I know what happened with Mom and with you. Frederica, Garf. Frederica's eyes grow teary and wet in the wake of the violent emotion. What should he say? While frustrated at himself for his lack of eloquence, Garfield searches for the words that will convey his feelings accurately. He searches his head, and all the books he has ever read, for the words he must say. Garfield, I get why you left Sanctuary and why you never came back after that. Ain't what I see and actually say, but I am trying to get it. So it's, well, you know. Frederica, you are ready to forgive Mother? Garfield, what's there to forgive? Garfield's mouth relaxes into a smile as he replies to Frederica with a shake of his head. Exactly. What's there to forgive? The love and hatred that Garfield kept in his heart this whole time had been misaimed. He knew nothing of the truth, didn't even know his own feelings, lashing out in anger at the impenetrable darkness, all a tantrum and nothing more. Now that he knows the truth, it's all insignificant. There was nothing to forgive or resent. Garfield, I know now that Mom loved me, that she loved us. Frederica. Garfield, so there ain't no point trying to keep me away from what happened. Ain't got nothing to do with my amazing self. So how about we get to talking about something a little less crap, sis? Garfield's speech pattern returns to normal as he rubs his reddened nose. Frederica give a long, deep sigh. She wipes the tears from her eyes. Frederica, Garf, you truly have grown. Garfield, fucking sarcasm. I ain't grown a damn inch compared to you. The hell happened to you? How'd you get so damn gaha? Frederica, we may be family, but that is no excuse to say such things to women, Garf, you idiot. Frederica grabs him by the leg and slams him to the ground, the back of his head banging against the floor. Garfield's eyes spin as he stares up at the ceiling, Frederica standing in his view above him. Her face is back to a smile. Frederica, come now, stand up. Garfield, you're Ch.1 who fucking flipped me over. Garfield takes her offered hand. Gets back to his feet. He lightly brushes himself off and peers over at the counter that Frederica had been using. Garfield, so? How far you got with your meat pie, sis? Frederica, I have gathered the ingredients and had just begun to chop them. Though, it impresses me that you remember how to make it, considering that you only ate it when you were young. Garfield, it's 'cause some persnicket left th recipe behind so I could make it after she left. K, my amazing self'll need the dough. Frederica, then I will do the chopping. Garfield stands before the ingredients as he wraps a towel around his head, prepared. Frederica brings out the cooking utensils for him as he does so, smoothly passing them over to him. The siblings begin working in conjunction, no decade-long divide in sight, as they easily attend to the familiar work together. End of chapter 1-5.